This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bernard Melson from TSG Training. I have with me John Young, my principal trainer, and Debbie Archer, Managing Director of ISTQB UK. She works for the company from which we buy exams and is our preferred examination provider. John is going to talk to you quite a lot today about the ISTQB 2018 Foundation Syllabus and what's changed, but importantly, take you through one of the key test techniques that changed between the 2011 and 2018 syllabus. You haven't joined to listen to me, so I'll pass you straight over to John, who will take you through the rest of it.
Thanks, Bernard. So, as Bernard mentioned, I'm John Young. I'm one of the principal trainers at TSG Training. Basically, I've been involved in training and particularly the foundation course for a lot of years. I originally taught the old ISAB foundation course back in the late 90s. But anyway, enough about me in that respect. Let's carry on with the presentation. So what I'm going to cover on this session is, first of all, I'm going to give you a high-level summary of what's changed and then go into that in more detail about the teaching time and the learning objectives. And I'll give you an overview of the way the course content is different between the 2011 and the 2018 syllabus. And to put some of that into context for you, I'm going to give you a little mini lesson into some of the changes in one of the most popularly applied techniques in testing, the boundary value analysis. After which we'll summarize up and then I'll pass you over to Debbie, who's going to give you some more information on ISQI. So what's changed? Well, one of the things that's changed this syllabus is we as trainers have been given more time to put the content across to you. So there's now an extra, just over 2.3 hours extra time for us to put across to you the content. So the course is less rushed in the terms of putting the ideas across to you. And the part of that's been done because ISTQB have reorganized over the years the way learning objectives are taught, and all the other advanced qualifications have got set times for K1, K2 and K3 learning objectives, which in the past, the foundation course just picked up on the old timings. So to help that work for us, once the learning objectives were considered and the time allocations, it was realized that basically too much was trying to be taught. So what we now have are 22 less learning objectives and more time to teach that content. It also means the exam is focused on 22 less specific things. So although we're going to give you content that's valuable and relevant to you, you're not having to cross-study over so many different specific questions. It's also quite helpful from the question writer's point of view as well. The content itself has changed quite a lot. There's a lot of extra detail that's been added to the syllabus, which actually makes it easier for you to learn because the detail's quite specific and precise, and some of the old ambiguities have been thrashed out. To make this work, as we mentioned before, less learning objectives. So there have been some things that have been removed from the syllabus as well as things being added, but I'll summarize that in the next few slides. One thing to stress, the examination is the same format. So it's still a 1 hour, 40 question, multiple choice exam. The pass score is still 65%. And that's 1 hour for people who've got their native language for the exam. So exams the same in terms of its context. The learning objectives, there are less of them, but some of them have changed, but we've got more time to teach you with it, and you've got more time to pick up and absorb and learn, and also really beneficial for you is to be able to ask questions to the trainers. So there's more time. The minimum teaching time has been increased by 2.33 hours, but this is still a 3-day course. It's still quite practical to fit all the content into a 3-day course and still have time for the exam on day 3. This table is just showing you a bit of the detail of the syllabus sections and how that time changing is affecting them. So basically, apart from testing in the software development lifecycle and tool support, every other topic's got more time to put the content across. The 2 areas where have been simplified, it's also reflecting some of that reduction in learning objectives. So more time, that's good for you, good for us. It means it's less pressured. The learning objectives have also changed, so there are now fewer of them. So in this table, we've got a comparison of the learning objectives from 2011 syllabus to the 2018 syllabus, and in total, 22 less learning objectives. If you look across the chapter headings, sections 1 and 2, fundamentals of testing and the testing the software development lifecycle, they've got more learning objectives. And if you notice, there's more on the K2 side. The other chapters, so from static testing, test techniques, test management, tool support, they've all got substantially less learning objectives as a total. And if you look at the learning objective types, we've actually reduced the number of K1s by 12. That's quite a big jump. And K1s were the main memorizing, learn and recall learning objectives. So this is now less a syllabus about memorizing terminology and more about understanding context, understanding the concepts behind the terminology, and that's going to be basically better value add for you as well. To summarize some of that content, we're still covering the same topics. So we're still talking about the fundamentals of testing, how testing fits into development lifecycle models. We're still looking at that important aspect of static testing, and chapter 4, test techniques. This is a minor point in one respect, but they're no longer called test design techniques. We're now talking about techniques for testing because we're recognizing they fit across the entire fundamental test process. So we've also still looking at test management. This is a foundation. We're looking at basic concepts, and management's an important characteristic of that. And we've still got some reference to tool support and giving you an introduction to how tools can help us with testing. We've explained some of the detail. In the fundamental section, we've now got a lot more detail on the really basic important things like test objectives, how different they can be. A lot more detail, and we've changed a little bit the way the test process is described now, so it's much more realistic the way people work in a day-to-day manner, and a lot more detail now on the kind of work products we produce as a tester and as a test team, and where they fit into that process. Some of that detail has been pulled into chapter 1 from chapter 4, because really we had a lot of overlap before, we had a lot of repetition. So now your teaching time and your learning time is all looking at things that are being put across at the right point of learning and the right point of the process. There's less repetition. So more detail in fundamentals of testing, and that also reflects in the additional time. Also more detail in chapter 2 on testing in the software development lifecycle. Although we've dropped the time here, we've changed the content to reflect more of the real projects that people are working on now. You've got to remember that the 2011 foundation is ultimately based on the original 1998 BCS ISEB foundation, and over the years it's not really kept up with what people are doing on the day job. So through feedback from the working groups and feedback from ISTQB surveys, the processes in all the chapters are, and some of the detail, the subtle detail that's changing here, is reflecting the way practice is done in the field rather than pure academic concepts. So what we're looking at in chapter 2 is more detail on iterative incremental. We're not going into Agile in great depth. There's still a foundation extension from that deals particularly with Agile approaches, but we're making this fit into more of the hybrid type project that people are working on, particularly when they're coming in at the entry level. So in chapter 3, this is one of the real changes. This is where things have been added and things have been taken away. The emphasis on reviewing has been substantially increased now. There's more time in the syllabus, there's more time to teach, and we've got a lot more specific detail on how we do reviews, how formal reviews work, and how we review work products. So the process is more detailed, and also a new K3 learning objective has been added. So that's the one of the practical apply learning objectives. So rather than just learning theory, this is about making you review something, find defects, which is what you're going to have to do in the day-to-day work of being a tester. This helps us both learn more about what to do and add value in the marketplace. To find that time and to complete that work context, one of the things that's been removed from the foundation on static testing is the white box code-based static analysis content. That's now rightly in the ISTQB Advanced Technical Test Analyst syllabus, where it's always been a more natural fit. So it also means for people who are new to testing, you're not getting wrapped up in the detail of the work that developers do, although it's still being recognized as an important activity. Now, chapter 4, Mainly here, it's extra detail on how to apply techniques and clarify a lot of the inconsistencies and confusions that people have had in the past over the applications of these techniques, particularly in boundary value analysis and state transition testing. So again, the detail's been added to reflect what people are doing in real projects. To find time to be able to teach that extra detail, the whole idea of code-based white box techniques has been reduced from the original K3 and K4 learning objectives to a K2 understand. So again, no one's getting bogged down with development type testing, but you're still understanding its importance, its value and context. In addition, on the test techniques chapter, we've added an extra experience-based technique, and it's one which has come out of ISTQB surveys that people said should be included because it's being used very commonly. In terms of test management, it's a foundation course. You need to know enough about test management to be able to work inside a team, but recognition here that some of the detail in the previous syllabus on test planning estimation was probably beyond what people need at entry level and has been moved to the test management. Well, rather than moved, it's always been in the advanced test manager qualification, where it's really the appropriate place for it to be. What has been added is a little bit more detail on the context reports and how we put reports across, a little bit more detail on the use of metrics. And the last section, chapter 6 of the syllabus, tool support for testing, the time here has been halved. So originally there was 80 minutes of teaching here. That's been reduced to 40 minutes, and the level of detail and tool support has been reduced, particularly on test tool categories. So there's less detail to try to memorize, but what's been added to benefit people who have come in on these courses in this syllabus is more detail on the benefits and particularly how to realize those benefits for some specific tool types and how to use them effectively. So that's just a summary of the key changes, but to put some of that into practice, I'm just going to do a little mini lesson on one of the most commonly used techniques in testing, boundary value analysis, and explain how that's changed from the 2011 approach to what we've got in the 2018 syllabus. So we've got a little requirement here that says an input field accepts a 3-digit integer value as an input using a keypad to limit inputs that non-integer inputs are impossible, and the valid range is from 1 to 500 inclusive. So if I did a bit of equivalence partitioning, then what we're going to have here, and I'm just going to check my pointer is going to work properly, is if I draw a number line, then we've got a valid range of between 1 and 500. So that's my valid partition. We've also got a range of, actually, if we said 1 to 500 inclusive, then we've got 501 to 999 is too high. I found the 501 from the fact these are integer inputs, and the 999 is my assumption. If it's a 3-digit integer value, the highest number I can put through a keyboard is 999. So that's my upper limit. Now, in terms of my other partition, or my other most obvious partition, which is too low, then I've got an obvious boundary of 0. And this is really a partition of one value on its own, because after that we've got -1, etc. And they're signed integers, and you can't apply that to a keypad. So we've got three partitions: valid, too high, and too low. Now, the definition of a boundary in this syllabus is exactly the same as the definition of boundary in the previous syllabus. It's the highest and lowest values inclusive in the partition. So my boundaries are too low, because that's a partition of one value. We've got valid lower. We've got valid upper. And we've also got too high lower. Excuse my terrible handwriting. And we've got too high upper. Now, if it sounds like I'm being far more precise than you've seen in the past, this is because of what I'm going to do with the technique next. So I'm now going to write on the left-hand side of my little scribble table what those boundaries were. So for too low, the boundary is 0. For lower, for the valid partition, then the lower boundary is 1. And for the upper boundary is 500. For too high, then the lowest value or the lower boundary is 501 and the upper boundary is 999. So I've got 5 boundaries, and you're probably saying to me now, well, what's the big deal? Because that's exactly the same as we did it in the old syllabus. But what the syllabus is now explaining is the precision when we actually test one individual boundary. So if I'm testing the too low boundary, 0, I'm now going to test that according to this technique with the boundary value and then the nearest boundary of the adjacent partition. And my most immediate adjacent partition is too low. So I'm going to test 0 with too low, the boundary is 0. I'm going to test this with the lower boundary valid, which is 1. So I'm going to test 0 with 1. Now for the valid partition, my boundary is 1. I'm going to test that with the immediate boundary on the next partition, and that's 0. For the upper boundary of valid, 500, I'm going to test that with the lower boundary of too high, which is 501. And for the highest boundary, the higher limit of too high, 999, I could test that. Apologies, I've just done 500 with 501, so that shouldn't be 999, that should be 501, which I'll test with 500. The too high boundary, 999, I would test with 1000, which is infeasible. If I've got a numeric keypad and it's got 3 digits, I can't put 1000 in. So that's probably a test I wouldn't do unless I'm doing negative testing. I'm looking for defects. So what we have are a set of tests and some duplication. So if I'm interested in testing the boundaries of the valid partition, that's the 1 and the 500, I would end up testing 0, 1, 500, and 501, these ones. So these test the boundaries of the valid, of the partition called valid. Now, I won't bother testing 0 and 1 again because that's a duplicate. I won't bother testing 501 and 500 again because that's also a duplicate. So if I'm just testing, boundary testing of what can you do, what you're allowed to do, I'm just going to test 0, 1, 500, 501. If I wanted to introduce some negative testing, I might include 999 as well. But now I've got 5 tests, which give me the clarity of tests that cover all the partitions placed correctly, the boundaries implemented correctly, and I'm managing the risk. I'm doing more tests than I would do if I was doing equivalence partitioning, where I'd only pick 1 value from each partition. And you've got to bear in mind, because that valid partition is so wide, there's 501 possible values. I've reduced that to the 2 that are most likely to prove it's correct, plus the 2 that are most likely to prove it's incorrectly. So I'm making my work far more effective and far more efficient. But you still might say, but we taught that anyway on the old foundation course. All you've done is added a more process around it. That's true, but this process gives you clarity. It gives you the ability to explain what you're thinking to other people. And actually, if you've got a camera phone, you write this on a whiteboard, take a picture of it, that's your documentation. So it's actually a very practical way of doing things. Now, I haven't taught you anything new. So I'm now going to show you the 3-value approach. And a lot of people will say, well, we do this anyway, because it's a practice that's been used in software testing for quite a long time, but it wasn't in the ISTQB syllabus before. And that actually did cause a bit of a furore when the 2006 syllabus was originally devised. But let me show you through the technique, and then you'll see why the 2 approaches can be relevant. So in this approach, I'm going to identify, it's the same requirement. So we've got input field, 3-digit integer value as an input using a keypad. So we can't use non-integers, and the value range 1 to 500 inclusive. So that's exactly the same as we saw before. A valid partition between 1 and 500. Too high, 501 to 999. Too low, 0. And the boundaries, I'm not going to bother writing them out again because we did in the previous, but I'm just going to list them. The boundaries are the same: 0, 1, 500, 501, and 999. So if we just flick back to the previous slide, you'll see the listing of boundaries no different. So we've got a consistent approach. Our definition of boundaries is identical, but now the test is different, because you'll see on the left-hand side on the actual slide, we've got the boundary value of a specific partition, and then we've got the value just below the boundary and the value just above the boundary. So for every boundary, we can identify 3 potential tests. So that means if I'm testing 0, which was the invalid partition, the one that you don't accept, then I will test this with the value below, which is -1 because it's an integer input, and +1. To test 1, which is the lower valid part boundary, I'll test that with 0 and 2. To test the upper boundary of valid, which is 500, I'm going to test that with 501 and 499. And the upper boundary, 999, I'll test with 1000 and 998. So what this technique makes you do is challenge the specification against, say, is it an integer? What is the smallest possible value that's relevant between the 2 partitions? And this is a technique which deliberately overtests. So if I write all the potential tests out using this technique from the boundaries, we've got now -1, 0, +1, 2, 498, 499, 500, 501, 998, 999, and 1000. But look at the spread. We're talking, we've reduced 1,000 inputs to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But if we think about this from a positive testing point of view, there's no point testing 1,000 because I can't input it. And there's no point testing -1 because I can't input it. So I've now actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tests. They're the 9 non-repeated feasible tests that are worth testing. So I've now reduced 1,000 potential inputs to 9. I've removed the things I don't need to test. There's still a lot of repetition here. There's a lot of overlap. When we use 3-value approach, we're deliberately testing one partition with 2 values to see it's placed correctly. So it's important that we only do this for high-risk situations. Because look back to 2-value. I can test the same situation with 5 tests. So if it's medium to low risk, that's probably a more relevant technique. Remember, we're always looking at risk against reward and making the effort work well for us. So that's just a quick overview of one of the techniques. It's the Swiss Army knife of testing. We use it in all situations, and how the 2018 syllabus has clarified and brought it back into both options becoming available to you. So just to recap, more time, fewer learning objectives, a lot of detailed changes, most of it subtle, but we've dropped a lot of the white box stuff. We've put a lot more relevant things in. The exam, same format, same number of questions, same pass rate, just based on the new syllabus.
Thanks, John. That's really good. We just had one question. I think it's worth recapping that because we discussed it earlier, and that's the principal benefit, John, for you for the new syllabus over the old one for testers.
For testers, first thing is it's a lot less academic, it's a lot more practical. It's much more up to date with common practice. And bearing in mind the foundation course, we're not bogging people down with some of the white box theoretical developer-oriented content they had before. And this content has come out of ISTQB surveys in the testing community. What's relevant? What should the foundation do? So it's taken a lot of the repetition, duplication out of the syllabus, brought it up to date, freshened it up, and made it much more, I think, relevant to where people are today.
Excellent, that's really good. Thanks very much. So we've got our first run of this course, guys, on the 10th of September. Get in touch if you're interested, but we will give a little time to Debbie from ISTQ, who's been sitting here patiently waiting to talk to you. Thanks.
Hi, first of all, I'd like to say a huge congratulations to TSG Training. When the news of the release of the 2018 syllabus came through, they were so anxious and keen to make sure that they were addressing the needs of the market, and very quickly updated their materials, and it is an extensive update to make sure that actually they were offering their customers the best. So it's great news that they've actually got a course scheduled. I'm going to just give you a little few facts and figures about ISTQB, hopefully not take up too much time. We're a group of companies. I'm Managing Director for ISTQB UK. We also have our service centre based in Germany, our Boston office serving America and South America, our BV in the Netherlands. We are delivering in 6 continents, 100 countries, in 10 languages, and our certificate, I think it's fair to say, has international recognition. We are not just a one country certification body, but truly a global certification body. We are the preferred partner of multiple ISTQB boards around the world, and they rely on us to make sure we have trained invigilators. We have over 500, and actually new invigilators are now certified according to the very high ISTQB standard. Our channels of exam delivery include paper, online, and also Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE offers over 5,200 test centres globally. We are supported by a network of globally recognised subject matter experts, and indeed you've heard from John Young today, and it's wonderful that John shares his expertise and his practitioner experience in helping to review areas of syllabus, etc. Since 2004, we've delivered well over 143,000 exams, and currently the run rate is probably about 33,000+ per year. We deliver exams to the highest standards for personal certification, i.e. the ISO 17024 standard. As mentioned, if someone comes to you with an ISTQB certificate on their CV, then you can be confident that it has been validated according to the highest of standards. We offer over 35 vendor-neutral industry-focused certifications. As mentioned, we are the International Qualifications Board for ISTQB, also the Qualifications Boards, TMOI Foundation, IREP for Requirements Engineering, and UXQB for Usability, amongst many others, use ISTQB to deliver their exams. We like to look at the market and see what actually the testing community, the IT community are looking for. As an example, Selenium will launch, which will be a practical and job-ready certification, where the training is very much aimed at supporting, yes, the certification exam, but also real skills in the workplace. Our own certifications include Agile, Scrum Master Pro, and our mobile app tester, and I'm delighted that TSG Training offer courses in all of these areas, and I have to say that we get really good feedback and some really good results also. ISTQB exams, we offer the whole portfolio without exception, including the new Foundation Level 2018. So we are delighted to work with TSG as their preferred exam provider. The Foundation Level 2018 exam is available, has been since launch, and we're seeing some really good uptake of that. So now complemented by accredited training, I hope that the market will really take advantage of this new, more practical focused certification. As mentioned, we make exams available via Pearson VUE. One of the things I think to say is that it's great working with TSG on corporate solutions, helping organisations to develop their people. TSG Training try to offer a lot of flexibility in how they approach supporting the examinations of people. So whether people need to have some time to revise or do it straight after the course, they look to offer what is best for their customers. Just a little note there of our website, so please do have a look at it and spend some time perhaps looking through some of the other areas of curriculum we have. A little bit about how it works between the parties. We have the Qualifications Board who set the syllabus and indeed who author the examinations. So a little note on ISTQB. In the UK, ISTQB is represented by the UK Testing Board. And this is really important. They are the organisation who are responsible for overall governance of the ISTQB scheme in the UK. ISTQB are an exam provider and TSG a training provider. As an exam provider, our responsibility is to deliver the exam according to the standards, but also importantly to monitor the performance of the training provider and if necessary share that with the board. Working with TSG, I have to say, they really take this very seriously, and they do look at performance of their trainers, at the results of the examinations. So hopefully people who do work with TSG and ISTQB can be confident of the services that they're receiving. Just a little bit about credentials. Keep an eye out for the accredited training provider logo from UKTB. As I mentioned, ISTQB in the UK is the UK testing board. TSG have this, a big tick in the box, and it's really important when you're looking for training in ISTQB that you look for that logo in the UK. Organisations who don't have that logo are not officially accredited, which means that actually their content may have not been reviewed by the board. So I'm not saying it would be bad, but I'd highly recommend looking at an accredited training course. Also, take a look out for the ISTQB Finest Partner logo. This means, as an example, with TSG Training, that we are working together to make sure that the performance of the, based on exam results, is positive. So just finally, again, a big thank you to John for that little lesson, and thank you from me to TSG for coming to market so quickly.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, John. And thanks very much for listening. We hope to see you at TSG Training soon. As I say, the first London course we have is early in September, so get in touch if you want it. Thanks very much.